Hi, everybody, and welcome to Linda Summers Life After 60 Relationships 101. And today's topic is going to be raising children and their perspective as an adult with my three sons, Brandon, Brent, and Blake. So, hey guys, thanks for joining today because I know that you guys have a lot of things to do, but you're here with me today, and I'm really excited, and I really appreciate you guys being here. So, thank you.
Of course.
No worries.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So. And the reason I'm doing this is because I've had some friends and some people ask me, how did you do it? How did you raise three sons? And I was like, well, gosh, it's been a long time, first of all. And it really wasn't easy. They challenged me in a lot of different ways. And that I feel that we really did the best that we could do at the time, the tools that we had. And looking back, I think, gosh, I could have done things a lot different. So, and I had my mom, and there was Freud, the books on with Freud and all of that, but his stats were not actually from observing children, they were from observing adults. And so, and I never really thought about a book and, learning how to raise children through a book. That just didn't make sense. And my mom had 7 kids, so I figured, hey, she knew what to do with 7 kids. So anyway, with that being said, I am going to open up the floor and to my sons for them to share their experience. But before I do that, I just really want to say that it's my hope that all of you that are listening today, now and then after this, that you find or have a better perspective and some suggestions from their point of view of how they raised. And then I also wrote down some points that I thought were really important looking back on how I was raising them at the time, or their dad and I, how we were raising them at the time. And so, yeah, so let's just open up the floor to you guys and go for it. So what was it like for you guys growing up as a child? Let's just start there.
It was good. I think being the middle child, I kind of had less of the brunt of kind of everything. I think Brandon probably got the most of it, and Blake maybe the least. I don't know. But I think at least for me, I got into sports kind of young, so I kind of had something to do all the time. So that really kept me busy and kind of out of trouble most of my childhood, I think.
So do you think sports are really good to keep the children in?
I do. I think I was a kid that definitely liked to mess around in class and kind of was a free spirit. And I guess not to really knock that down, but to kind of hone it in and kind of corral it a little bit. Sports really helped and kind of taught me a lot of things as well, like team player and, that was probably a lot of high school sports really taught me that.
Yeah. Cool. That's good. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I guess, start off by saying that there is an age gap between all of us. There's 8 between me and Brent and 11 between me and Blake. So I know there's a lot of families that have kids, back to back to back, 1-2 years apart. So we're a little different to where we have, a bigger age gap. I think it's good and it's bad. I mean, there's I shouldn't say bad, but there's pluses and negatives of both of those. One being, being the oldest, it was kind of like a trial run. You kind of learn what you're doing with the oldest person. Yeah. And when the next one comes along, it's like, okay, I'm going to do things differently than I did with the first person or the first child. And, and I don't want to say I got the grunt of things. Maybe I was a little more, I had a little more restrictions because you guys are just putting rules in place for me, because you didn't, it's the first one you had. And then Brent came along and it was like, okay, we've already dealt with this with Brandon. We know what Brent's going through, and all this stuff, but I still think that, there's a different dynamic between all of us,
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think growing up, same as Brent, you know, and Blake as well. You know, we all got into sports. I got into sports really young, 5 years old, and poor Brent. And then when Blake came along, he got dragged along too. But Brent was dragged along to every single game, every single tournament, you know, and whether he wanted to or not. And let me tell you, there were times where he didn't want to go. You know, he wanted to stay and hang out with his friends, but
That's
you know,
right.
he was young and there was no one to stay home because, you know, mom and dad were going to the games and cheering me on. So I think it was tough. And then, you know, of course, then Blake comes along and same thing. You know, I was already I think I'd already graduated, so I was just about, you know, college when he was starting to play sports or anything like that. So he didn't get dragged along too much, but you know, yeah. So it's just you know, growing up it was definitely an experience for sure. And I'm sure these guys have a different outlook on it than I did, and you know, because they were younger, so they saw things from a different perspective for sure. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say about this too.
As far as the sports part goes, I hated sports, and I feel like it was kind of like because you guys were doing it, I had to do it as well. And I think I mostly hated it because I was just like not good at any of them. And if that was just kind of how I was, I think, when I was younger, was if I wasn't good at something right away, I didn't want to do it. And definitely, I think, like, I didn't really start, you know, like fully playing like a lot of sports until high school. And before that, it was like, I mean, there was like a brief period when I was like a, you know, teenager before that where I wasn't really playing any sports. And it definitely, I think there was like a little bit of a dynamic of like, you know, like both of you guys, you know, played sports, and that was like you guys' thing, and I didn't like sports. And I don't know if it was because I didn't like it because
you were forced.
I was forced to, or if it was like, I don't know, but there was
It's like,
definitely,
you're gonna play sports.
but I definitely felt like kind of like the black sheep, you know, like the one not playing sports. And I feel like that definitely, because of that, like the thing that I was good at was like school and stuff like that. So I think that was my, I mean, I'm sure you guys remember me like in car rides and stuff, playing that, like the trivia game on like the little, you know, those little like long sheets, and just like always trying to outsmart everyone, type of thing, and like prove how smart I was. And I think a lot of that was because I was like very insecure about the fact that, you know, well, I wasn't good at sports, but that was like your guys' thing. And also, like, you know, dad was like the coach for the hockey team and everything. So it was like, I felt like that was like, you guys had the connection to him with that. But I think it definitely made a big impact later in terms of like, you know, at the end of middle school, I was like, you know, hanging out with some questionable people, and you know, getting up to no good. And I still, like, to this day, think that there was like one turning point really in my life, and that was like when I almost got arrested. And at the time, like, the punishment was, you know, it was like at the end of the school year, so it was pretty much grounded all summer. Couldn't leave the house or like my room, like no TV, no phone. And it seemed like pretty harsh at the time. Oh, and then, you know, then towards the end of the summer, it was like, oh, by the way, like, you're signed up for freshman football, so good luck with that. Which I was like, yeah, which did not sound fun at the time. And I wasn't allowed to hang out with any of my friends, any of the old friends. And so, yeah, it seemed like pretty harsh at the time, but it was probably like, you know, one of the best things that had happened to me, because you know, I started getting into sports, and that like took up a lot of time. So I wasn't like, you know, just out of school running around with, you know, all the hoodlums and stuff and doing stupid things, causing trouble. But also I like found a lot of new friends doing that. And yeah, and I think it had a really positive impact. So that's, I mean, that's as far as sports go, kind of how my feeling on it was. But I do appreciate that, like when I was younger, Mom, you especially, never try to like force, like, you know, you would say like, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it, type of thing. Dad being kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, like you're gonna do it. And I don't really know like which, you know, side I would do personally, you know, when I have kids, like, because I do think it is really important, and I think it makes a big difference. But also, you don't really want to force like kids to do it if they don't want to do it. So I don't know. I honestly don't know how to go about that. At the time, I appreciated. I think at least just like saying that, you know, you don't have to do it was nice. But I think I kind of would have. I'm glad that I was forced to do it in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel the same way about like, I kind of wish that I had been forced to do other things, like learn how to play an instrument. I didn't really start doing that until college, and I never would have started doing it on my own. And so I think personally for me, like that's something that I will probably force my kids to do, just because I think, you know, even if they don't really like it at the time, it's worthwhile and has like pretty long lasting like impacts on their, you know, potentially like their well-being, or it's just like is another skill that they have, and they'll probably appreciate it later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So many good points that you guys had. That one, Brent, when you talk about, you know, playing sports and how it's kept you out of trouble, I think that can help a lot of kids, right? That if they are playing sports, and of course how did you feel? Did you feel that it was forced upon you, or just it was something that was, you know, Brandon did it and then you ended up doing it, and you just kind of slid right in there?
It was kind of like that. Like you said, you know, I kind of got dragged to all the games, and
Yeah.
all the parents. So when are you gonna start playing? When are you gonna start
Yeah.
playing?
Yeah.
You know, so it, you know, I kind of was hesitant at first, but then once I got into it, and I was on a couple of travel teams, so you really make a lot of friends, especially the ones that I was on. You know, probably for maybe 5-6 years, kind of all of us played together. So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, really making long-lasting friendships, and really learning how to interact, I guess, with people your own age, and kind of almost growing up a little bit, more than maybe someone that doesn't have anything like that. And maybe if it's not sports, find out what your kid likes, you know, and maybe not force them, but gently encourage them to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Blake said, if it wasn't sports, you know, if it had been an instrument, I'm sure it probably would have been a lot more willing to maybe put, you know, more effort, do a lot of practice, you know, about the same as probably a sport would be.
Yeah. Well, so it's a really good point. I really love that. And I loved how Brandon, how you had mentioned the difference between the age group. You know what I mean? So it's like there's so much of a gap between there, yet, you know, it's like when you were definitely trial and error because I had no idea what I was doing. And so, I mean, I don't feel parents, well, not feel, parents don't get a handbook, and I don't think kids get a handbook on how to be a child and also how to be a parent. There's a lot of books out there at the time, you know, and there's a lot of people that say, well, do it this way and do it that way. It was basically, as you said, you were probably got the brunt of it, and a lot of restrictions on you because of not knowing. So you were kind of like the test child, so to speak. And then as Brent, you know, Brent was born, it really kind of made it easier because it was like we knew like, okay, this is what we were doing. It was like a structure. And then Brent came along, it was like got a little easier. And of course Blake came along, it was like really easy because it was like got this down. And so, and I think as looking back on it, I think that as a parent, maybe your life gets maybe more stressful or whatever, and you just kind of allow, and that you get very lackadaisical and allow things to happen where you wouldn't have with the first child. So I love what you said about that. And the parenting style, you know, as like you were talking about, it is different. It's like we're one parent, and I think that's really important and key for parents too, to understand your own your own parenting style. Where I was, you know, one way and your dad was another, but as you said, you gained something from both of that as looking back as an adult, which I think is really, I think if we're in awareness of that as a parent, that our parenting style, I think it makes it much easier. And then I also liked how you said about unimpressible people. So I think that's really key as well for parents out there that who have smaller children, teenage children, and even children up until, you know, 23, 24, 25, that, you know, we can be in these groups of people that may encourage us or, you know, lead us down the wrong path until we decide that, oh my gosh, this may not be where I want to go. So I think those are really, really good points that you guys had. Is there anything you guys want to talk on that that I just said? Because then I'll just go some points that I have, and then you guys can tell me what your thoughts on those.
I just to chime in,
Yeah.
going back to, like, you know, letting your kids figure out what makes them, what drives them. I think a lot of times now, like, you hear that term helicopter parent. A lot of parents are so protective of their kids, like they don't want them doing this, they don't want them doing that, and the kid basically lives in a bubble. And it's like, okay, well, how is this kid going to grow up and, you know, function in society if they're not able to experience these things, whether they're good or bad? I mean, you know, I'm sure we've all, you know, everybody in general has been in bad situations, and hopefully we learn from those and we grow from those. But I think that's part of the learning, that's part of the whole learning process is going through that. And I think the big thing for parents is to really let the kid figure out, like Brent said, like figure out what it is they want to do. Like, you know, I enjoyed playing hockey, and that's all I wanted to do. I didn't want to play any other sports, but, you know, I was forced to play baseball, and I hated every second of it. I did not like it. I played it for one season. That was it. But I'm glad I did, because I tried it out. I knew I didn't like it. You know, there's so many times where, you know, especially like, you know, with anything, it's like, oh, let's, you know, try this out. Like, no, I don't want to. I don't like that. But how do you know if you've never tried? So, you know, I think the biggest thing is just letting the kids, you know, be themselves and let them figure things out on their own, you know. And it's like, let them climb a tree. Yeah, they could fall and break their arm, but that's how they learn. You know, you learn that, you know, just for instance, for climbing a tree, it's like, okay, you climb a tree, you didn't have a good grip, you fell off, you broke your arm. And then, you know, most parents be like, okay, you're never climbing a tree again. But it's like, okay, well, how does the kid know if he learned or not? You know, I mean, they got to keep climbing. They got to keep trying it over and over. So I think my whole thing is just letting the kids, you know, be a kid and experience things on their own. And of course you can be there to guide them. And, you know, if they're going to say, hey, I'm going to go run on the freeway, like, obviously you're going to be like, no, that's not a smart idea. But you can express to them why it's not a smart idea and give them examples instead of just saying no. Because when you just say no, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to rebel and I'm going to go against that. But if you give them an example or you explain to them why it's not a good thing, then I think it makes a little more sense. Maybe not 100%, but I think it's just better than just saying no, because too many times we just, you know, as a society, we say no, 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 no. And that's how we grew up, is like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to try that. No, I don't want to eat this. I don't want to do that. So that's just my take on it.
Yeah, good point. Really good.
I'll go for that. Like he was saying, if you don't let your kid kind of find something like that, it's, you know, it's no, I've lost it. Never mind.
To keep them involved in something. Is that where you're going with it?
No.
To allow them?
No, I lost it.
Okay, when it comes back, just throw it out there, but say something.
I mean, I agree with that strategy of, like, you know, letting, because I had to do the same thing. Like, you know, had to play t-ball, but then it was just like one season. That was like kind of that was like the agreement. Like, you had to try something but you'd only have to do it for one season. So it was like baseball for a season, soccer for a season. I don't know. I think they had like golf lessons for a little bit, and then like football for a season.
Yeah.
And I think it was good. Like you should have to do something, but letting them find, you know, what they want to do as opposed to trying to guide it. Because I think a lot of times, especially like, I think a lot of parents tend to want their kids to do things that they like.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're like trying to create like a little, you know, miniature version of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that's kind of, I feel like a lot of times it's just the kid becomes like resentful about those things and doesn't want to do it because they're being like pushed to do that.
Yeah.
And then just going back to the part about like, you know, the changes between like the parenting style with each like kid. Yeah, I think I definitely had it the easiest, the least supervision. And I guess it also ties into, Brandon, what you were saying about not being like super controlling and helicoptering the kid. I feel like I kind of had free reign to just like kind of roam. Like I generally feel like about my childhood that like I was always very independent, and I don't know if that was just because I felt like I was just kind of off on my own, doing my own thing. Like, you know, Brandon went off to college like sooner, and Brent was always like doing sports and stuff. So I feel like I kind of ended up just, you know, doing a lot of stuff for myself and just like out with my friends from like dusk till dawn. And I think that's been like a pretty strong, like that was definitely a pretty strong theme throughout like my childhood, was just that kind of lone wolf type of vibe. And it's definitely something that I still have now. And I think like on the one hand, I think it's probably one of the, you know, one of my like greatest traits. I think it's like given me a lot of confidence and the ability to do things that I probably otherwise wouldn't have done. And it's been like very, very beneficial because I think I'm pretty like self-reliant and all that. But I think on the opposite end of that, it also has been like probably one of my biggest like causes of like issues in my life, and like, you know, being very like just self-reliant and kind of solo makes it difficult to like connect to people. And, you know, I feel like sometimes I can be selfish in terms of just thinking about, you know, I've always really just had to look out for myself as opposed to other people. And so it's definitely something that I still like, you know, I don't think it is, you know, goes one way or the other in terms of being good or bad. I think it's both at the same time. It's just kind of like what happened. But yeah, that just kind of, and I agree with Brandon. I think that having that ability to kind of make mistakes, I ended up learning a lot of things a lot faster. But yeah, I guess that was like the one thing I wanted to say about kind of just the general, like looking back, kind of the general things that I've taken from that is like a lot of independence. And yeah. So.
Well, it's interesting when you talk about that, because having that independence, like you said, because I want to come back to you too, Brandon, when you talk about, you know, because we let you roam, right? Because we knew you weren't going to go far off. We lived in a U-shaped subdivision, and so we knew you weren't going to go far, and everybody knew you. But then when you became in your teenage years, remember, it was like then all of a sudden we said, no, you can't do this. And you were like, well, how come? Here I've had this freedom, and now you're trying to stop that freedom. Do you remember that? Like, you know what I mean? Trying to because now it was a teenager where we thought, okay, gosh, now he's going to start getting into trouble. You know what I mean? And things like that. So we kind of put the restrictions, you know, saying that you can't do this and can't do that. But for all that time before that, you were really being able to have that freedom. How did you feel about that when the freedom was taken away? You know, here we talk about parents that they're giving their child the freedom, then all of a sudden in the early teenage, 13 years old, or, you know, 14, now they're saying, you know, hey, you know, we're not going to let you roam as much and have that freedom as you used to have.
Well, I think kind of just the exemplification of like how I felt was the fact that right after that I ran away and left a very seething letter. So I think that kind of speaks for how I felt at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And Brandon, you know, when you were talking about, you know, playing hockey all your life too, remember when your brothers were in karate, right? And you never went to karate because your whole thing was hockey. So we never thought about putting you into another sport because it was like hockey was your passion and your love. And now your passion and your love is still hockey, but what you do is teaching Tung Sado.
Tung Sado, yeah.
Yeah, karate. So a form of martial arts. And so that has been something that really is sort of embedded in you. So I find that really interesting too, like you were saying, is that when you allow them, and all three of you really said it, allowing them to have the experience of different things, not outside of sports. It could be sports or, you know, any type of instrument, anything like that, to have that experience.
Yeah, it was, you know, it's like hockey was all I cared about. That was the biggest thing for me was, you know, playing hockey. And there were times where I was forced to go to do certain tournaments or do certain things, and I wanted nothing to do with that because I was getting older and, you know, I was starting to, you know, get more friends and starting to get interested in girls. So I didn't want to go and go do some of these, you know, big tournaments out of state or wherever they were at. But I think it was definitely good for me that I was forced to do that. But like, you know, like you said, I think the kids should have an option to try things out, you know, and to do stuff that gets them excited, you know, like Blake said, like I wish I was forced to learn an instrument too, because I'm trying to learn the guitar and it is a pain in the butt because I'm older and, you know, and my mind doesn't work like a child. I don't absorb things as fast. And so yeah, I kind of wish that I was forced to do certain things too, which, you know, besides just sports. Right. And along those lines, you know, I think a huge thing for parents these days is getting their kids out in nature. Like Brent and Blake and I were having a conversation the other day, and I was just telling them how, you know, nowadays I'm so much more appreciative of going and seeing these places and hiking and doing all this stuff. And you know, and I have a friend who takes her kid, and her kid's 5-6 years old, and has taken her since she was a baby to hike. And this kid knows more than a 38-year-old does about nature and how to respect it and what, you know, what the rules are. And it's like, I kind of wish that when I was younger, I was forced to go on nature hikes or, you know, to go on trips where we, you know, explored and saw different kinds of things. And maybe we did, and I don't remember, but, you know, as far as I remember now, is like that we weren't able to go on these adventures. So yeah, I just think that parents should get their kids out in nature more, and themselves as well. I mean, I think that's a huge bonding time for them.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of off your question, but it just kind of popped in, so I had to mention it.
No, it's perfect. It's a really good point. Really good point. So I want to kind of, unless you guys have anything else, one of the points that I wrote down, and we sort of tapped on it, is allowing them to be themselves, not what we think and how we think they should be. Because, you know, there's certain thing where as a parent, it's like, this is how we want to box you in. We want to make you, this is how we want you to be. And I feel that it's important, looking back, you know, it's important to allow them to be themselves and not what we think or how we think they should be. We think that you should be a doctor, or we think that you should be a lawyer, or we think that you should be whatever, right? As a singer, a dancer, an adventuresome person, you know, like going out and doing adventure hikes or whatever it is, right? Because that's what we think that you should do, as opposed to allowing them to be themselves. You guys have anything to say to that? No, we kind of tapped on it a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next point I have is letting them have a voice. So often we tell them not to do this, not to do that. And I think that we I know I have in the past, and I know as growing up, your voice is shut down, right? It's like, you don't have a voice, do as I say, your opinion doesn't matter. And I feel that early on as a mom, that I felt that was the direction I was in until I started coaching and realizing that it was a different type of parenting, really, as allowing you guys to be yourselves and have a voice and giving you choices, as opposed to saying, no, this is the way it is, and that's the way it's going to be. You guys have anything to say on that one?
Well, I think the best, I would say, in my case, would have been a kind of a 50-50. You don't have to be overbearing to them, and you don't also have to be just kind of loosey-goosey, do whatever you want. Maybe find the middle ground where you can kind of establish talks with them and let them know that you're the authoritative figure. But if they do need to come to you with something, that, they don't have to fear you. I learned a lot about it becoming a manager at a store, especially in customer service, having to be the boss of so many different people and learning how to manage different people and how different people need a kind of a different molding, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of have to a little bit more carrot and stick with some people. Some people kind of get it right off the bat. So, you kind of have to play around with it. It's got to be fluid. You can't be stuck or, stiff about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point. Good point. I think communication is really important for sure. Blake, any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't really think at the time. Well, in terms of communication, I think looking back, I don't think I really told you guys much about, and I mean, really up until very recently, and even I guess still feel like I don't really share a whole lot of my personal life or what things that have been going on. Although I have noticed that sometimes you guys are you guys know more than I thought you did. But I don't know. I feel like there's some people that have relationships with their parents where they I have friends who they could tell their parents anything at any time, or they're they call them every day or like that. And I don't think that that's better or worse. I almost think that I don't think that would really work for me. And I don't know if it is from as a result of just the way that we grew up or we were raised, or if it was just something about me in particular. But that's just kind of how I feel.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, it's good. Brandon? Any thoughts?
As far as communication,
yeah, letting them have a voice.
Yeah, I think that they should definitely have a voice, but whether it's not saying that they're going to whatever they're asking for or whatever they want to tell you, it's not like you're giving into it. It's just listening to them and letting them know that they have a safe place to come to and talk to and be heard. That's the biggest thing, is that from what I noticed from working with kids is that they don't feel like they're ever heard. You might, parents might think that, oh yeah, I give my, we have dinner, we all sit down and have dinner together, and I ask my kids every day how their day was, and they talk to me and they tell me, and it's like, yeah, but that's kind of forced. I mean, I remember it was like, nope, shut the TV off. We're sitting down as a family. We're sitting down. We're going to eat. And it was just it was a forced thing. So it was like, if I don't want to talk, or I don't want to communicate, it's like, let's just sit down and eat and get done and let me go back to doing whatever I was doing, and, but I do think that the kids should be heard. And I think they should definitely have the right to have a safe place to talk to their parents, and their parents. The biggest thing is their parents don't judge them, and too many times these days that we judge, even as adults, we judge everybody, and we judge what people say, what they think, how they feel, what they're wearing, or whatever. And I just think that if a parent can come at the situation as, hey, I'm just observing, and I'm just going to listen and let you talk, and I'm not going to give you my opinion and tell you how you can fix it or how you can do this. It's just, sure, yeah, you want to talk, yeah, I'll listen, and if I have something that is comparable, like in my life that I went through, then I'd be happy to tell my kid that, and explain to them, well, here's what I went through, and this is what I did, but I'm not saying that you have to do this, or just along those lines. I'm not saying whatever their question might be or whatever they're talking to you about, but yeah, I do think that communication is huge, and and you just can't be like, okay, yeah, go ahead, run off and do your thing, you're just a kid, and go talk to Joe Schmo about whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah.
I think that you should definitely want them to come home and talk to you and open up to you and express to you what's going on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And then the next point that I have is to be active in their lives. I think it's something where, it's easy because you're busy, and it's easy to just drop your kids off at a birthday party and go off and do something else, and or drop them off at the shopping mall, or you're just leaving them without places, and not inquiring where they're going, who they're going with. Because for you guys, we had a lot of restrictions on you. You had a certain time limit. If you missed that time limit by a second or a millimeter of a second, you were punished for that, right? And it was always grilling you. Who are you going with? Where are you going? What are you guys going to be doing? How are you going to get there? And I know, as I remember you guys being a child, like, geez, like, what are you just grilling me, and just, do I have to tell you everything? And so I think that, I think as a parent, it's important to be active in their lives, and knowing who their friends are, and participating in their life, being at the events, and not just dropping them off to say, okay, I'll see you later, I'll pick you up at a certain time. Yeah, if they want to go to the shopping mall with their girlfriends or whatever, that's, you want to have them have that friend time. But that's my perspective on it. What do you guys think?
I would say not as much. I mean, you definitely want to be in your kid's life and like more involved, but I think, any more than, dropping them off at a party, going in, making sure like, things are okay. And like, I don't know, I think you can get too far, too overbearing, into your kid's life. And then at that point, that could just shut them down and not want to talk to you. There's, I think, like I said before, with the kind of middle ground, you have to, figure out how far to let that leash go, and how, do you know their friends? Have they come over? Have you talked to their parents? I think there's steps that you can do without really invading their privacy, kind of, that's what I'm thinking.
Good point. Anybody else on that one?
Yeah, I think like for me, like I do not do well with a lot of questions. I shut down, and I think, like Brent said, it's like you start hounding them and asking all these questions, and it's like, okay, where are you going? Who are you with? Who are their parents? And what time are you coming home? And who's driving? And whatever. And I just think that's too invasive. And if you can just figure out a way to let them open up and give you that information without asking the questions. I mean, I was doing that to ask you questions like, oh, hey, where are you going? Like, oh, cool. Like, great. Or, if they're going, oh, I'm going to a concert. Like, oh, right on. Who's playing? And oh yeah, I've heard them before, and great. Yeah. They've got great music. And then let the kid kind of open up and say, oh yeah. Mark's going with me, or Sarah, or whatever. And, we're going to probably be home around 9 or 10, and try to get them to give you the information instead of asking the 500 questions, because as soon as you do that, it's like they're just going to run away and be like, listen, I'm done. I don't want to talk to you. Like, my friends' parents don't hound me and ask me to, and ask them these questions like, why do you? And I think it gets to a point, there's like Brent said, there's a happy medium. There's a middle ground where you can go and it's like not asking enough questions, or not asking too many questions, but not asking no questions.
Mm-hmm.
So I
you got to ask the right questions,
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the hardest thing, is figuring out what's the right question to get them to talk. And and usually I would assume that you would know how your kid is and what what gets them to react and what doesn't. But yeah, I just think that not asking 1,000 questions is going to help you out tremendously, because for me personally, I would shut down, because I'm like, I'm tired of hearing this. Every single time I want to go do something, it's like, who are you going with? Where are you going? What time are you going to be back? Who's driving? And it's like, oh my God, who cares? Like, I'm just going to this place. Like, who cares who's driving? And it's just,
or you just make something up.
Yeah, right. Or they just make something up and they lie to you.
So,
and then you're like, okay. Then the parent finds out, and it's like, well, why did you lie to me? Like, you could have just told me where you're going. Like, well, no, because you're asking 1,000 questions, and I don't want to tell you because you're going to ask more.
Yeah, I think it should be more that, like, you should be trying to create a kind of relationship where you don't need to be asking those questions.
Yes.
Like, they should feel comfortable enough to tell you about that stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to build those kinds of relationships. Like, I know other people do, because I've seen it. But I mean, I guess, yeah, it probably involves, on the one hand, like, involving yourselves in their lives somehow. But yeah, not to the extent, like Brent was saying, like, not to the extent where you need to know every single detail about what they're doing, where they're going. But, like, yeah, I guess it's just engaging them and, like, being present, and yeah, it's really about, I mean, it's like creating a relationship.
Yeah.
A separate relationship from just, like, authority, and then like an authority figure.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you want them to feel like they should want to tell you, or at least feel comfortable telling you.
Definitely. I love that. Good.
Yeah, and I think in the beginning, like when you're starting out with this, it's like, okay, you have to be okay with not knowing 100% of the details of where your kid's going. Like, for the first month, 2 months, or whatever, it's like, okay, you're not asking all these questions. Good. And then eventually, hopefully the kid will start giving you that info,
Mm-hmm.
without it being, asked for, or without you asking for it. So it's like, okay, now they're giving me this information, and I didn't even have to ask. All I said was, hey, where are you going? And that was it. And then all of a sudden they started telling me, I'm going with this. This is who's driving. This is what time we'll be back. And it's like, whoa, okay. But it's just understanding that, hey, you can't, it's like anything else. It's like, you're not going to, if you've never played football before, you're not going to know how to play football right away. You got to go through a process. So same thing with the kid. It's like, okay, you want them to open up to you, but you can't just expect them to open up right away. You got to ask 1 or 2 questions and then leave it at that, and don't stress or don't freak out about the other portions of it.
Mm-hmm.
Just let them eventually be okay with telling you.
Yeah, really, really good point. Because it's interesting, because the next question or the next point was going to be.
Add something to that before
we
go
ahead,
on,
please. Yeah.
I just want to say that I think, like, that developing that relationship probably has a lot to do with like building trust. Because I feel like the biggest reason why you wouldn't tell them that stuff is, one, you're, like, afraid that you might get in trouble if you're, like, with the wrong people, or that's pretty much, like, the only, like, I can't really think of any other reasons why you wouldn't, like, be more forthcoming, is because, like, you're worried that you're not going to be, that they're going to say no, that you're not allowed to, whatever. So I think it's just about, like, you'd have to build trust, which obviously, yeah, Brandon said, it's like, that takes time. Yeah, it's like something you have to build.
Yeah, definitely. Such a great point, because I wrote that. Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, but if you start that when they're young, then it travels to when they're, in a teenager, and then they get older. but it's just starting it when they're young and not being so forceful with those questions, you know, because I guarantee they will, you know, if you start it when they're 8, 9 years old, they're going to be like, I'm not telling you anything. You keep asking me all these questions. I'm not saying nothing. Or I'm gonna, or like Blake said, I'm gonna lie to you and tell you what you want to hear, and then I'm gonna go do the opposite.
Yeah. And I think too that go ahead, Brandon or Blake.
I was saying because I definitely did that.
Yeah. I was gonna say, you know, like as a parent, it's like, you know, raising you guys how I was raised, right? Only what I know. And so it's a good point that you said that. And Blake, it was funny because I wrote down the word trust. It is really, it's a trust factor that be able to, but I feel that also what the next point was going to be is listening to them. They will often, you guys shared with just listening to you, what you had to say, you guys shared things about yourself, right? And what you were doing without even inquiring. So there was times I think as parents, we need to listen more to what, you know, just to be able to listen more to the child. But I think trust, it's a huge factor, plays a huge factor in there.
Yeah, I think like the listening definitely is a big thing. And I think just like engaging them is good. Like you said, being active and like asking about, I feel like it all goes back to, I mean, I feel like a lot of these are interconnected types of things, is engaging them and like not asking them like super direct questions, just like everyday questions and about their lives and what, like how they're feeling and stuff like that. And it's, you know, it doesn't have to be like prying necessarily, but I think, you know, that more active engagement is probably good. From
a genuine standpoint, as opposed to trying to inquire to get information.
Yeah, like with it, one end of the spectrum being like totally hands off, free reign, like kids just running around doing whatever they want, and the other end of the spectrum being like super prying, having to know like every detail. Somewhere in there, because like you're going to be learning that information if you're actively listening, but also you're, you know, building that relationship where they're going to feel comfortable talking to you about the harder stuff if they're used to talking to you about, you know, just everyday things.
Definitely. And I remember when you guys, we would be traveling to hockey or the different sports, that we as parents can find out a lot of information as well. Because, you know, you guys are back there, you're chit-chatting and back and forth and talking, you know what I mean? So not really paying attention to the mom or the dad driving, you know what I mean? So I think that's another aspect of really listening, but where I was going the first time of listening was really listening to your child, you know what I mean? Because I think that the children you will know if you listen, if there's something going on emotionally within them, but it takes really a listening of, and like you were saying, instead of prying, you guys were saying instead of prying is really just asking from a genuine standpoint of how are you doing? How is school? Like, you know, how are your friends or things like that, just out of curiosity.
Well, to go back to your listening thing, you know, the biggest thing is like you said, listening, but not focusing on what you're going to say to answer their whatever they just told you, because then you're not really listening. You're just trying to figure out how can I respond to this. They're talking, but I'm going to respond to this, and instead of just really being present and focusing, because I mean, I see that all the time.
Yeah, good point, because I remember, I don't know which one it was, if it was Blake or Brent. I want to say it was Blake, when you were trying to talk to me and I was doing something. I was washing the dishes and I said, I'm listening. And one of you, I believe, like I said, Blake, it was you, said, no, you're not. You're not listening at all. And I was like, wow, okay, you're right. Because I had already gone through coaching at that time. So I think that's really key too, is, and not just with children, but with our friends, our partners, is to be very present with them. Because even though we can say we, as a woman, you know, we can multitask and do a lot of things, right? But I feel that the other person is not being heard, right? That you're not present with them. And this is just my perspective. So I think that's really important, is to be very present with them.
Mhm.
No comment? Okay, we'll go on to the next.
No,
I
I agree.
agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, cool. The other point, I only got a couple more, you guys. We try to live our dreams, and we tapped on this a little bit. We try to live our dreams through our children. I've seen it happen to where, like we talked about being a doctor, like I wasn't able to be a doctor, so I want my child to be a doctor. I wasn't able to be a lawyer, I want my child to be a lawyer. I want my, you know, I wasn't able to be a singer, so I want my child to be a singer. And I feel that it robs them of being able to be the self-expression of themselves and who they truly are versus us trying to live our life. I think a lot of parents, and I'm going back to when I was raising you guys, and I sort of see it as parents somewhat now. I'm not really around a lot of people who have children, but I have friends that do. And so I know going back to them, then I saw where a lot of parents were living their life that they weren't able to do through their children.
Well, yeah, you know, if you just dump all of your dreams, you know, and something that you want to do onto this kid, you know, they might not understand or really get it at the time if they're young, but then, you know, when they grow up, they're obviously going to realize, you know, like if, you know, if your dad's a pro football player and he puts you into football, you know, that's most likely the route you're going to take, you know, but, you know, if you're something else, like you know, you just got to, like we went back, you need to find out what they like to do.
Mhm.
And, you know, unfortunately you can't live vicariously through your child.
Yeah.
You can't push them into anything that they don't want to do, because they're going to push back, and you're going to get a rebellious kid that's not going to tell you what they're going to do. They're going to make up lies, you know, and you're going to essentially just have to start from square one again,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah, good point. The next point is being aware of what you're going through. And I'm totally guilty of this. You know, being stressed out from work or having just an argument with someone, that I found myself taking it out on you guys. And I think as a parent, that looking back, I feel that we need to realize if we are going through something ourselves, that we need to take a time out. We need to step back and not engage with our children if something's going on. Somehow, some way, do that. You know what I mean? That you don't end up taking it out on the child. Because, like I said, I know that I did that, and looking back, I think that really wasn't good to do, for sure. You guys have anything to add to that?
I mean, I think it's like a job, you know, if you're having a bad day, you kind of check it at the door, and, you know, you do what you need to do to get that job done. Whereas, you know, it's like a parent doing the same thing. If you've got stuff going on in your life, maybe just try to push that aside and not, I don't know, take it out on your kid.
Mhm.
You know, you might be frustrated from something that happened in you that day, and then you get home and you find out your kid spilled soda on the floor, and then you just lose it.
Right.
You know, that's not going to help anyone in this situation.
Yeah.
You know, you just need to sit there, take a breath, remove, you know, your, I don't know if I should say your personal self from the situation, but I guess your more personal life
Mhm.
dealings than what's going on in the family.
Yeah, good point.
Also, just try like explaining it to them, like why. Because I mean, a lot of the situations, like, you know, you kind of, it happens before you can catch yourself.
Mhm.
But I feel like if you explain, you know, obviously like apologize, or if you do catch yourself, explain like why, because then you're leading by example and showing them like how to be, you know, how to deal with emotions and stuff like that.
Good.
Because
Yes.
if you're just, you know, hiding it, which, you know, I feel like, I don't know, in general, like across our whole like extended family and everything. I feel like generally a lot of like the deeper issues and stuff don't come up in normal conversation. It's usually like kind of surface layer stuff. So I think, you know, having more of those conversations kind of normalizes it and leads by example to show them that like you don't have to just kind of like tuck away those things. Because if you're just, you know, bottling up, not saying anything, and they obviously like you're obviously affected in some way, like, you know, even if you don't blow up at them or anything, you're still like kids will notice that kind of stuff. So by explaining to them like what's going on and, you know, how you can, what you're doing to deal with it, I think is a good way to like show them that, how to do that like healthfully,
Yes.
a healthy way.
Yeah. So they can learn to do it themselves. They don't stuff it. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah. Both of them. Brent too.
Yeah, those are both of you guys had great points. But yeah, I think that, like you guys said, it's like, okay, you come home and spill a soda and then you freak out on them and you yell it because you had a bad day or whatever. Well, in turn, that they start picking up on that and they start realizing, okay, well, that's how I should be then too. Like, you know, like I'm gonna shut down and I'm gonna be in a bad mood, and you do one thing wrong, I'm gonna blow up on you, you know, and the kid gets older. But like Blake said, it's like if you can sit down and even if it's like 30 minutes later and you're like, okay, I've like Brent said, take some breaths, remove yourself, and then once you realize you made a mistake, you go back to the kid and you say, hey, you know, mom and dad or mom or dad is sorry that this happened. You know, I had a really bad day at work. Somebody, you know, you don't have to go into huge details, but just saying, you know, I had a really bad day at work. I brought it home and I shouldn't have. And then you did this and I blew up on you and that was not right, you know? So, and, you know, the kid might be like, well, screw you too. But eventually they're going to realize it's like, okay, making the effort to apologize and, you know, making the effort to show me that wasn't about me, it was about what was going on with them. And you know, that might be a hard concept for a younger kid to understand, but you know, an older kid might be able to get that, you know, and realize that. But yeah, I think that's a big thing.
I think you probably put it in like terms that they could understand, like, you know, Susie takes your teddy bear, you know, and at work someone took my office chair, you know, so, you know, kind of something in along those lines, you know, something that they can understand.
Make it relatable.
You know, if someone cuts you in line at recess, you know, how does that make you feel? You know, something like that. You know, I got cut off in traffic, you know, so I felt the same way. So they kind of, okay, you know, daddy or mommy was angry, or like, I know how they feel now. Because, you know, as a kid, you don't really understand, you know, your emotions and how you feel and everything. And, you know, I guess being able to know and kind of have the same thing as your parent, it's probably better.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, you know, oh crap, I forgot what I was gonna say. Go ahead, I'll think about it. I forgot what
Being able to express their emotions.
Yeah, but I was gonna go with something else, but along those lines. But it'll come to me. Okay.
So the next one is, how do you guys feel about, you know, I had you guys trained to do your own laundry, cooking, sewing, you know, at a certain point where I'm like going on strike. I'm not doing your laundry anymore. You guys are responsible for your laundry. Here's the directions above the washing machine. So what do you guys think about that? And you know, the purpose was when you guys are going to eventually go off to college and be on your own. I wanted you to be able to be in life, you know. Thoughts?
I highly recommend it. I think being able to do my laundry since, you know, 13, 14 has really helped me, because I've met people that don't know how to do laundry or pump their own gas or, you know, do certain things where like you just can't even fathom that, you know, someone wouldn't know how to do those things. But to be taught, you know, it's a little bit easier on you.
Yeah, I think it's like so important to teach those skills, and not even like you know, like obviously like, you know, chores are probably, I mean, I don't know whether they're useful or not, but just I guess my only thought on it would be if you could figure out a way to do it in like a way that is engaging, like you could almost use those as, you know, opportunities to like connect with your kid, like instead of, you know, like getting them to like help you do things, you know, it's like a way you can
fold
teach.
laundry together.
Yeah, fold laundry together, cook together,
Yeah.
do things like that. Because like on one hand, you're like teaching them. Two, it's like, you know, opportunity to connect and hang out, spend time together. And it's better than just being like, all right, you need to go do your, like, go, you know, do this or do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Good point.
Yeah, I definitely am glad that I had to do laundry at a young age, and because like Brent said, it's like I know people that didn't know how to do dishes, didn't know how to do laundry, you know, couldn't change a tire. I think it gives the kid a sense of responsibility, and yeah, they might not be excited about it, but you know, it's just still, it's like, okay. And then like Blake said, it's like making it relate, you know, being with them and doing it together and making it to where it's like, it's fun. It's like, okay, you know, I don't know, you know, maybe you guys are singing while you're doing the dishes together, or, you know, you're dancing, you're making a movement, you're making it not just, okay, we're washing the dishes, let's get this done, this sucks. Because when you say it sucks, they're like, well, this sucks. Why would I want to do this? But if you make it fun, and it's like, okay, hey, we're gonna do the dishes now, and we're gonna dance while we're doing the dishes, or we're gonna do the laundry, and or whatever. It's like just making it relatable to them and making it fun with them, and doing it together, you know, and not saying you have to do it every single time together, but every once in a while it'd be cool, like, hey, let's do the dishes today, and like, I'll dry, you wash, or whatever, you know. And but it, you know, if you have multiple kids, then it's even better, because then there's like an assembly line, and they all work together, and they're all, you know, they're all connected to each other, and you know, and it'd be cool for the parents to listen to the conversations that happen while they're doing that as a group, or you know, or if it's just, you know, you have one kid, then you're building that relationship with that child.
Yeah. Gosh, I wish I could go back and do it all over. It's so great to hear your guys' perspective after all these years, and just listening to you guys, I'm just so enlightened. Like it warms my heart, and I really appreciate it.
Well,
Looking back, you think as a parent that you could have done things different, that you may have done things wrong because you didn't know. But then you look at your son, your children, as when they're adults, and you see the magnificence and the maturity and the perspectives that you guys have. It's so beautiful, that it is so wonderful to see, and be able to have you guys share this with other people so they can have an experience that's different than what I had experienced. You know what I mean? What I thought was right at the time, that, you know, your dad and I only had the tools that we had at the time. So I just really thank you guys just for bringing all of this beautiful wisdom and knowledge and perspective that you guys have. So thank you.
You're
yeah,
welcome.
thanks for having us on here.
Yeah.
Thanks for raising us.
Yeah,
you guys did a pretty good job, I think.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And just to you know, a recap, it's like, I think that if you would have known now what you know back then, what you know now, it's like we might have turned out completely different, you know. So it's like, there's a reason for it to happening. But if you were raised by your parents and you were yelled at and, you know, whatever, and you didn't feel good about it growing up as an adult, don't do it to your kids. Just because it was done to you, don't you know, keep bringing that back and keep the cycle going. Change it, break it, you know, make a change and do something that you think would be healthier in raising them. But don't feel like you have to do what your parents did, you know. Yeah, you might have the first kid and not have the tools that you think you have, but you know, nowadays there's so many resources out there. There's so many groups of single parents or parents with teens or whatever, and it's like, don't be afraid to ask questions to people and say, hey, here's what I'm going through. Like, does anybody have any we have a huge resource of knowledge on social on online now. So I hope parents use it, and of course I hope they reach out to you and ask you questions, and I'm sure this video gave them some answers and some insights. But
Definitely.
I'm glad that were able to get on here, and
Yeah.
and thanks for bringing us together and for
Yeah.
raising us.
Oh, you guys, it's a blessing for sure. Definitely. So I have one last thing that I want to ask. Out of all the things that you guys have gained in your life, what is one thing, a gem, that stands out for you that you feel would be beneficial for anyone watching this video?
It's actually kind of funny. The notes you used to leave in our lunch boxes, I still have one. It's the
Really?
only
Oh my
one that I
God.
still have, and inside it says start right now.
Mm. Wow.
And I think I just kind of kept it because I tend to procrastinate on a lot of things, and I think if you just start right now, whatever it is, start it. Don't put it off. Don't hesitate. We only have this life to live, and if you don't, then you're only going to have regrets about it.
It's beautiful. Thank you. It's awesome.
That's all I got.
I think one of mine would be, I think either Brent or Blake touched on it, but that you always let us try something or let us do, if we didn't like something, you're like, well, then don't do it. You never were the forceful one. You never forced us to do anything. And I just think that was huge, because it was like, it made me feel comfortable, and it made me feel like, okay, if I don't like this, then I don't have to do this. Like, it doesn't have to be something I have to do. And you've always instilled that in us. You've always been there, spiritually, like in a spiritual aspect of that has been like, connect to yourself, be who you are. Don't be who anybody else is, just be you. And that's something that stuck to me, and that I've really started to realize just lately, that's huge. It's like, so many times we grow up and we're like, oh my God, I want to be like this famous baseball player, this famous hockey player. And it's like, but that's not you. You can become one of those, but your own version of that. Each one of us is unique in our own way. And it's just honing and finding those talents within us and letting them out, and not having to say, hey, well, like for Brent, I'm sure Brent was told thousands of times, like, hey, be like your brother. Why aren't you like your brother? Well, he's not freaking me. He's not gonna be me. He's gonna be him. So, I think that's just the biggest thing, is just making sure your kids know that they can be who they are and be unique themselves and just be themselves.
Yeah. Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you.
I think probably the biggest thing that has helped me in my life has been just like constantly being told to just do like what makes you happy, and if it's not making you happy, then why would you like pursue that? That has been like such a guiding principle, I think, for everything that I've done. And I mean, even now it's like there's so many people that I know that like struggle with that, and like allowing themselves to have that softness towards themselves to be able to be like, this is not making me happy or not benefiting me, so there's no point in putting like energy towards it. Definitely
Awesome.
it was good. And it wasn't just like, one time, it was like all the time, and like just very strongly built into my values that is like really important to being happy, is just like, or I guess to just do what makes you happy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, you guys, thank you so much. I really am just so grateful to be your mom and to have you guys here, and to really be able to gift your perspectives on your growing up and from an adult's perspective. And so, like I said in the very beginning, hey Chester, in the very beginning, my wish and my hope is for anyone watching this that you find something in here that really helps you in raising your child or your children and going forward and being able to have a different relationship with them, you know, and not, you know, waiting so many years and looking back and thinking, you know, I wish I could have done it differently. This is a really good way to be able to hear three men give their perspective. So thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. You guys are amazing. Thank you again for coming together, and thank you, Stacy, for being here, and thanks for everybody else who'll be joining us afterwards. Greatly, really appreciate that. And yeah, so thank you all for tuning in, and look for the next show on Relationships 101. Not sure what that's going to be, but I'll be putting out a post. So thanks, you guys. I love you, and thanks so much. And we'll see everybody else on the show.
Love you too. Love you
Love
guys.
you.
Bye.
Yes.